I think if people are like, I want to accomplish this goal, the very next question is why? And then go, why? If your why is so strong, how it's gonna be done, it doesn't matter, you'll figure out.
You've got a book out called Level Up. Rob Dial from the Mindset Mentor podcast.
Not everything that's happened to you in your life is your fault, but whatever it is that you have, it is your responsibility to work through.
Why is it that we all want something? We have goals, we have things that we believe are important, but we struggle to focus on them?
Yeah, well, there's a couple different things. I think the first thing is that we hold ourselves back from is we have a lot of fears. And fears, when you really start to dive into them, like you mentioned in the beginning of this, like I started talking with you about like the East and you started to, I remember you told me in 2017, like you should read the Bhagavad Gita. So I literally wrote it, I got it like the next week and read it while we were traveling. And so there was that. And as I was writing the book, I was like, what's the thing? Because the original title of the book was The Psychology of Taking Action. Because I was looking at the Mindset Mentor podcast. I have 1,400 episodes and I was like, it's just me speaking for almost every single one of them. And I was like, what do I teach? Like, what do people want from me? And I was like, it's almost all like tips and tricks to understand yourself to take action. Because everybody who's listening to a podcast has the awareness of, I want to improve, I want to get better, I want something different, but how do I do it? And so I started saying, okay, if taking action is what the book's going to be about, like, why don't people take action in the first place? And one of the things that pops up for people is fear. Like there's some sort of fear that pops up for them. And I had a conversation with one of my friends who went and lived in the tribe with a tribe, a native Brazilian tribe in the middle of Brazil. And so he had to fly into a town, he had to hop on a boat and go for 2 days on a boat in the middle of nowhere. And he started talking to me about these things that he called primal fears and intellectual fears. So like a primal fear is pain or death is attached to it. And we don't really come up with too many primal fears in our life nowadays. Intellectual fear is like what we deal with all day long, which is, you know, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of not being accepted, the fear of success. We have all these fears, and all of these fears are made up in our minds. And so I was listening to, I'm pretty sure it was Sadhguru I was listening to. And I was like, I put on, and I was driving around in Sedona as I was writing the book. I was there just to try to get my whole mind together. I was by myself writing it. And I was like looking at fears and trying to figure them out. And one thing that he said that like really hit me more than anything else is, okay, I've identified my fears. And the next thing is, well, how do I overcome these fears? And if it's an intellectual fear, the fears that exist in our minds is you can't overcome something that doesn't exist. And so we basically wake up in the morning, we create the boogeyman, which is like the fear of success, the fear of failure, whatever it is. And instead of actually taking the action that we need to and focusing on what it is that we want, we take all of our focus and put it towards trying to overcome this fear. When in reality, the fear doesn't even exist in the first place. And so I think the biggest thing for most people is like the fear is keeping you from focusing. But there's also like the identity of who you think you are. And one of my favorite things is challenging who I think I am all the time. Like I love the story, and I put in the book of Jim Carrey when he decided to be in Man on the Moon. The Man on the Moon was a movie where he ended up playing Andy Kaufman. And there was a whole documentary that was done on this, and they curbed it for like 20 years because it was so off the rails of how crazy he went. And what he did was it's a documentary called Jim and Andy that's on him playing the role on Man on the Moon. So Andy Kaufman was a guy who was once alive. And the crazy part about Andy Kaufman is he also played other characters. So it was Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman, who played like Tony Clifton and other characters. But the thing that happened with him was that he would never break character. So he was a method actor. So for 4 months, he played as this real life person. And even to the point where his driver that would pick him up in Hollywood and drive him to his house said that whoever he was playing at the time that they stopped recording, whether it was Andy Kaufman, Tony Clifton, he would play that person the entire day when he was driving him home that night, and he'd pick him up and he was still the same person, not Jim Carrey anymore. And so what happened was he ended up like, and it gets kind of crazy, where he ends up doing therapy sessions with Andy Kaufman's real daughter and his family to like help them overcome his sudden death. And so what happens is they stop recording 4 months later, and he's like, I don't know who I am. And he lost who he was. And he's like, I don't know my beliefs. I don't know what makes me happy, what makes me sad, what pisses me off anymore. He's like, I've kind of just lost who Jim Carrey is. And that's kind of like his spiritual awakening that you've seen him go through over the past 20 years. And he realized, if I can lose Jim Carrey, then who the hell is Jim Carrey? And he realized that Jim Carrey is just basically a character that he's playing all the time that is completely somebody else, and he could just wake up another morning and act like he's somebody else. And so I think that two of the things that really keep us from focusing on stuff is we get really afraid and fearful of making change or judgment or failure and all that. And the other thing is like who we actually truly think we are will hold us back from taking either the action that we need to or, staying in the exact same position that we're in.
I love that. I want to go down both of those routes because I find them both fascinating for different reasons, and I want to go down that more spiritual, ethereal journey as well. Because but before we do that, I want to make sure that. So if we talk about the fears that people are experiencing, as you said, a lot of the time it's an intellectual fear. It's not real, but it feels so real.
Feels real, yeah.
Right? Like when someone says like, "Oh, I'm really scared about what if I get rejected from the job," or "I'm really scared that my partner's going to leave me," or "I'm really scared that I don't feel good enough or smart enough to make it in whatever field it is." Mm-hmm. Those feel extremely real.
Yeah.
How do you process a feeling that feels real, even though it may be intellectual?
Yeah, well, so that's the beautiful thing about being a human. And I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's actually in the Bhagavad Gita, it gives an example of a lion attacking you or a tiger attacking you at night. And, one of the examples I give in the book is similar to that, where it's like, if you think about it, we've all had this, we have a really intense dream. Like you're walking in a forest, whatever it is, and you see a lion, it starts running after you. You run from it, you turn, you look over your shoulder, it's getting closer, you're still running from it, you turn, you look over your shoulder, just as teeth are about to dig into you. And you wake up in the middle of the night, and your body didn't move at all. But you're sweating, you're out of breath, your heart rate is intensely going. And the amazing thing about being a human, they usually say, in any cases, what your biggest strength is also can be your biggest fault. The thing about humans is that we can project our minds into a future that doesn't exist yet. And so what we can do right now is we can sit here, we're in the studio, everything is amazing. We have food, water, shelter, clothing, everything. But if I'm like, as a lot of people do, like if I'm starting a business, right? I can sit here and I can think, well, I really want to start this business. But then I start playing out all of the things that could go wrong, which is what we tend to do. Not what goes right, but what could go wrong. When I project my mind into that future, the crazy part is that my mind and my body are constantly connected. So my brain is sending neuropeptides to my body and creating hormones as if that moment is actually happening right now. And so what happens is we tend to, as humans, as a protection mechanism, we tend to project ourselves into a future that is fearful, that is scary. And that fearful, scary feeling usually keeps us in the exact same place. And so what I always say is like, if I'm going to imagine the worst that could happen, why don't I at least try to see the best that could happen? And so if I'm going to notice myself, the awareness of like, I'm really in a lot of fear right now with starting this business. And I'm going, man, what's the worst that could happen? Well, then I might as well close my eyes and say like, what's the best that could happen? And what would it feel like to start this business and to be able to crack $1 million in a business? And how proud of myself would I be to break $1 million in sales and to be able to build this and travel with my family and provide what I've always wanted to provide? And if I'm going to feel the feelings of fear, why don't I also just try on feeling the feelings of success and getting there? And so if we notice it's an intellectual fear, the first piece that I always say is there's 3 pieces. There's the awareness of it. Okay, I'm aware that I'm in a state of fear. I need to practice to get myself out of that. Okay, if I notice myself in a state of fear, what's my practice to get myself out of it? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to calm down and take 6 deep breaths. And I'm going to connect back to my heart. And I'm going to ask myself, like, what's the best thing that could happen? That's the practice to get myself out of it. And then the last piece is repetition. So it's awareness, it's practice, it's repetition. If I do it over and over and over again, eventually I start to rewire myself. So like one of the things that I found in myself years ago that I didn't like was that I judge people. And I'm like, man, I love people. Like I try to be of service as much as I can, but an immediate thought that will come in my head sometimes is like judgment of somebody that I don't know. And I just judge them. And I was like, I don't like that pattern. I want to change this pattern within myself. It's awareness. I've become aware of what I want to change. And the first time I really did it, I was at a grocery store and this guy had this like Bluetooth, like the long Bluetooth. It was like as if he was, making cold calls at an office, but he was at the grocery store. And immediately the first thought in my head was judgment. And I always say you can't change your first thought, but you could change your second thought. So I noticed a judgment as a first thought. Awareness. My practice that I decided for myself was I'm going to force myself in my head to say 3 things that I like about this guy. I paused myself in the moment. I found myself in a pattern that I don't want to be in anymore. What are 3 things that I like about this guy? And I said it, and then I went on about my day. And I started doing this over and over and over and over again. And one thing that I noticed is that my first thought started changing to less judgment and more acceptance. Because ultimately that's what I really want to work on, is more acceptance and loving of people and of myself. And so I think it's becoming aware of it. Once you're aware of the things that the pattern you're trying to change, what's the practice that you're going to take yourself down? And then noticing that you're just going to need to do it over and over and over again. But one of the biggest keys is to give yourself grace as you're doing it. Because a lot of times we become aware and then we judge ourselves and we beat ourselves up for it. So I think it's giving yourself a lot of love and grace and going, hey, I've noticed this pattern. Don't worry, we're going to change it. Let's go on this practice, and just continuing to do that.
Yeah, it's so well said. I think so often we get scared even of having the thought of what could be possible because we're scared that it can't be possible. And we just find another thing to be fearful of. And I love this idea of what you're saying around transforming your thoughts, because I've definitely, the more and more I've studied books, the more and more I've read and I've thought, I've discovered that all of our failure and success in life is based on our most repeated thought. And one of my biggest questions to most people I meet now is, what is your most repeated thought? And most people don't know the answer because they're not aware, right, in your words. And a lot of people who do know will say it's something like, I'm not good enough. I don't like the way I look. I am ugly. Whatever else it may be for them, right? And so we're either aware and it's negative, or we're unaware because it's so subconscious. And I've started to recognize that most of the thoughts we have are not that different. They're the same thought that comes in a different voice, a different tone, a different vocabulary, a different language, but it's the same repetition.
Yeah.
And so I've started to really think about what's my most repeated thought, and how can I be more, as you are saying, how can I be more selective about it, and how can I choose it more effectively rather than just let it be something that's kind of just coming up.
Yeah. And it's like, don't identify with your thoughts. Like one of the things that, I don't remember where I heard it before, but the way I like to think about it, and I've heard you say before, even like a lot of people say like, oh, I struggle with meditating. And I've heard you say before where it's not about mastering your thoughts. It's not about making your thoughts go away. It's just becoming aware of your thoughts a little bit more. Because when we close our eyes, about 60% of our brain is visual, for visual things to see. So when we close our eyes, it kind of turns off a lot of parts. And so thoughts usually come up and we become aware of those. Like one of the things that I've been doing a lot recently is like trying to be in as much silence as possible. Like I'm just trying to be as much silence as I possibly can because I feel like that's where a lot of my awarenesses and a lot of my answers come from. And so when you sit there, and the analogy that I love when you start thinking of your thoughts is it's like sitting on the edge of a mountain and down below there's just a road going that you're looking at. And sitting on the edge of the mountain is like meditating or just sitting in silence and just, looking at your thoughts. And you can watch the cars go by, the thoughts that go by, and not have to be attached to them. You don't find yourself getting sucked into the red car that just went by. You just watch the cars go by. And that's the way that I try to see my thoughts, which is, okay, I'm going to watch them go by. I'm not going to connect to them, but I can look at them and be like, is this thought, which, about 90% of our thoughts are the same as yesterday, is this thought helping me in trying to get to where I want to be in life? Or is this thought holding me back from trying to get to where I want to be in life? And if it's helping me, then I want to fix it. If it's not helping me, then, hey, as like I on the podcast said, I can't control my first thought, but I can control my second. So what would I prefer my second thought to be?
Yeah, I think you can put it in my head, like that's what it is for me. It's whether you understood that you're not your thoughts, that can be quite hard for people. But even if you can practice distance through meditation or mindfulness, the real win is being able to look at a thought and say, is it good for me?
Yeah.
Or is it not helpful? Like you just said, like I think that is the wisdom of it, that can I evaluate everything that's repetitive in my mind and ask myself, is this useful? Is it helpful? Is it allowing me to move in the direction I want? Because chances are, a lot of what we're saying is actually doing the complete opposite. And then you go, oh, wait a minute, even though it's interesting, and even though I could get lost in it, I don't want to waste time. And therefore, I'll move in the other direction. You talk about procrastination in this book. Mm-hmm. And that, again, going back to your earlier title, is a block against the psychology of action.
Yeah.
And we all have a friend, or maybe we are that friend, that constantly puts things off. We postpone, we procrastinate, we say, I'll do it another year. I want to launch a podcast. Someone's been saying that for 2 years. There's someone listening right now who wants to start an Instagram page. They put it off for 6 months. There's someone listening who's like, oh, I missed out on the Clubhouse thing, and then I missed out on the TikTok thing, and now I'm missing out on whatever the next thing is. And we procrastinate, hoping that one day will come. What have you learned about procrastination through your research when you were writing the book that has helped people break that cycle? Because it seems to apply to so many of our lives.
I mean, the thing about it is this, I always like to be like very extreme in examples, because if we can go extreme, then it makes a lot of sense. But I always tell people, like, and I always say, like, hey, I've given this when I used to give a lot of speeches. I would be in front of people and I'd say, hey, what's the chance of you making $1 million this year? Give me numbers. And everyone's like 0%, 0%, 0%, 1%. There's always 1%. It's like 5. And that's like the most it'll get to. And I said, okay, I'm going to give you the most extreme example, but I just want to see what happens. Okay. What's the percentage chance of you making $1 million this year legally? And if you don't, everyone that you love dies. And everyone's like 100%, 100%, 1,000, 1,000%. I said, what changed? The goal didn't change. The time frame didn't change. Why you're doing it changed. Would you wake up in the morning if everyone that you love's life depended on it and be like, yeah, well, maybe I should scroll on TikTok for a little while? No, you'd be like, I'm going to take action immediately. And so it doesn't need to be like a fear of losing everybody, but what's really behind that is like why they're doing it. Like if I give a reflection of anyone who doesn't know Jay, like you're one of the hardest working people I've ever met, but you have a really strong why. Right. And that's like one of the best parts about it, where it's like when I see Jay, I'm like, this guy he has this internal feeling of like, I want to change the world. And you work so hard trying to do it. And that's one of the most beautiful things about you is like you're wanting to change the world and you have a really strong why to it. And I think that if most people could figure out like, oh yeah, well, I want to do this thing. Why do you want to do it? And my very first one-on-one coach used to say to me, he would say, what's your why? What's your why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? He would like hammer it home in my head. And I was like, why do you ask this so much? And he would always say, because if your why is strong enough, your how will reveal itself. If you know why you want to do something, how it's going to be done, you'll figure out. It doesn't matter. Things are going to get in your way. There's going to be obstacles. There's always going to be obstacles. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be moments of like, I don't know if I can do this. But if your why is so strong, it's like, I don't care what comes up in front of me. I'm going to get it done. Like most people, they want to be motivated. And I have come to hate the word motivation because motivation's so fleeting. Like we can wake up and we can listen to a podcast where we can get, read something and be motivated. And then something can happen to us and it's gone. It just disappears. What I want to be is I want to be driven. Like when you see a driven person, like you see it in their eyes, like, yeah, they're not stopping. And the difference between a motivated person and a driven person is that the driven person has this why that they want to see have happen in the world or in their life or for their family. And so I think if people are like, I want to accomplish this goal, the very next question is why? And then go why, and go deeper into it. An example I give in the book is I had a coaching client years ago, like 8-9 years ago. And he was like, Rob, I want to make $100,000 this year. I've never made it. And I was like, why? And I took him through what's called 7 levels of why. Just keep asking why. And it went from, I want to make $100,000 this year because I've never done it before, to the eventual thing was he had just got into a divorce a couple years ago. Both of his young children lived in a bad part of town with his ex-wife. He wanted to regain custody because he was afraid that both of his children would be killed in a drive-by. And he was so terrified of it that was his actual true why. And so it wasn't the motivation. I didn't have to talk to him and say, hey, how close you'd make $100,000 this year? I said, hey, how close are you to providing more safety for your children this year? Because he wanted them to move in with him. He wanted to be able to provide for them and to make sure that they were safe. And so I think that if we just ask ourselves, why do I truly want to accomplish this goal? It kind of reveals itself and it makes it a lot easier to take the action.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I appreciate all the kind words, but I can definitely say the only thing that's kept me going is my why. Because I think there are so many things that either make you want to give up or slow down, or become lazy or complacent. And when I look at it, and someone asked me this, I was sitting with another creator end of last year, and he was just like to me, Jay, why do you even do anything anymore? Like, what's the point? Like, it seems like you're good. Like, why do you need to do anything? And I was like, we've just got to the start of everything. Like, I just got to the beginning of where I need to be. I was like, we've just got to a point where we can connect with lots of people, but we need to give people the step-by-step process to transform their life. And now we can take them on the journey because people are listening, they're engaged, we have a community, we have a connection with people. But when I started out, we didn't have any of that. So I see it as we just got to the start of where I want to be because, and it was just interesting to me that so many people struggle to find their why. And I think it's because and you just said your coach helped you do it. It was the same with me. My art teacher from age 11 to age 18, he was my art teacher at school. And every time I'd paint something or draw something or do a collage or a graphic design, and whatever I do, the first question he'd ask me is, why did you do it? And I'd be like, my initial response was, because it looks good. Like that, I was a kid, what do I know? And he'd be like, every year he'd be like, why did you do it? And I'd be like, oh, because this color matches with this color. And they'd be like, why do you do it? And I'm like, oh, because it reveals the metaphor that I think this is about. And then he'd be like, why did you do it? And I'm like, because that's how I'm feeling right now. I'm trying to, and every year he would ask me, it would reveal more and more layers of my psyche in a similar way. And again, I've owed it to someone in my life who pushed me to ask the question why, same as you. And so I think what we're both saying is please ask that question to yourself. But what if someone asks that question and they feel stuck and they kind of go, I've asked it, but it's kind of just like, just want a nice house. Like I just want a nice car. I just kind of want to